not going to be able to stop that in our lifetime or 50 lifetimes. There's always going to be poor people. There's always going to be poor Muslims. And as long as there are poor Muslims, the trumpet's blowing. They'll join. We can't stop that, can we?
We can work with countries around the world to help improve their governance. We can help them build their economy so they can have job opportunities for these people. You're right. There is no easy solution in the long term to preventing and combating violent extremism. But if we can help countries work at the root causes of this, what makes these 17-year-old kids pick up an AK-47 instead of try to start a business? Maybe we can try to chip away at this problem while at the same time going after the threat.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you've heard it, you know it, you love it, and we're going to keep talking about it, and this time with the Malzberg panel. And we welcome commentator on religion, society, and pop culture, Brad Hirschfield is here, and Republican strategist and author of Hail Mary, Ford O'Connell. All right, Ford, you know, I just have to keep telling myself it's not her, and I wish it was just her, but she speaks for the State Department, and they speak for the president. And their strategy is to eradicate poverty in these Muslim countries, prop up their economies, and get jobs and businesses for these would-be terrorists. And that's going to solve the problem. And they also, by the way, told our enemy, who we're now at war with, we can't beat you by killing you. I mean, my God. Do you hear me, Ford?
Now I hear you.
I guess, Ford. Oh, you didn't hear that? You didn't hear my whole soliloquy there?
Well, I did hear portions of your soliloquy. My question is where's the Obama jobs program in the U.S. first? Look, the semantical hula hoops these guys jump through in the State Department and the White House is absolutely ridiculous. What we need with ISIS is a capture and kill strategy, and they're just going to continue to deny this and basically try to sit idly by and really not do anything.
And Brad, truth be told, full disclosure, you should have seen Brad's face when he was listening to Maria Harf go through that spiel. He couldn't believe it. I don't want to put words in your mouth, but you couldn't believe it, right?
No, I can believe it, and I actually understand what theory she's operating under. There's only one problem. It's been proven to be false. The theory is called secularization theory. And it was a prominent notion really through the 1970s among psychologists, social psychologists, anthropologists. And it boils down to this. If you give people enough flat-screen TVs, enough chickens in every pot, enough jobs, that will get them to leave the culture that they are part of, in this case, radical, violent, totalitarian Islam, and go a new way. It turns out that's not correct. It was disproven by the revolution in Iran and multiple revolutions in the Arab and Muslim world since then. By the way, if you ask me, am I for jobs programs for all people? Sure, I think it's a great idea. But worrying right now about jobs for ISIS is like getting hit by a bus and wondering about the glasses that got knocked off your face. It's a real concern, but boy, is it not the thing to be worrying about at that moment.
And of course, Brad, it pointed out, Ford, you know, radical Islam. That is not in the language, in the lexicon, in the mind, in the brain of Barack Obama, Maria Harf, or John Kerry, or any of them in that administration.
Well, no, it isn't. I'm wondering how you're going to defeat these folks if you can't understand what really they're operating under. This is about Islamic supremacy, taking land and killing anyone who is a non-Muslim, including a lot of Muslims who disagree with them. And if you can't really understand what it is they want, it's going to be very hard to defeat them. And this isn't just right-wingers saying this. This is the Atlantic magazine. This is CNN, not exactly the bastions of conservative thinking who are basically saying the only way to confront and defeat ISIS is to understand what they want. And what they want is really to push the apocalypse and have Islamic supremacy. So until we come to that understanding, all this discussion about, well, you know, there are a whole bunch of renegades who want flat-screen TVs and jobs, we're missing the boat. Yes, maybe some terror groups want that, but that's not the case with ISIS.
All right, and Ford, by the way, that was Chris Matthews saying to her, this isn't going to work. Chris Matthews, I mean, of all people. And you know, Brad, we got less than a minute here, but meanwhile, they're on the march, ISIS is, and they're 5 miles away. They just took al-Baghdadi, and they're 5 miles away from our 300 Marines.
Yeah, this is scary stuff. I would not be one of those Marines. I have to believe that if it gets any closer, people will step in and not let them be even further in harm's way. But Ford, what you said is 100% correct. The issue here is you want jobs programs. I'll even support jobs programs with one caveat. name the problem they're supposed to solve is radical totalitarian Islam.
And I wouldn't support a penny for jobs programs in other countries. Like Ford said, we got problems here. But anyway, we're coming back. Obama's immigration plan under fire from a judge. All right, folks, we're back with the panel, Ford O'Connell and Brad Hirschfield. And today, a federal judge provided some obstacles, or an obstacle, for Obama's executive order on immigration. He granted the request by 26 states to block Obama's executive order, and the administration says they will comply with that pending their appeal. So, Brad, this is, at least I consider it to be great news, and a court realizing that Barack Obama has overstepped his authority, trampled the Constitution, and acted illegally. I don't know that they said that, but I hope they meant that.
Well, they certainly didn't say it, and I wouldn't count chickens before they're hatched if you're in favor of this. What you said, Steve, is correct. A court has said this. The administration has come out and said, we're going to appeal. The appeal will get heard in federal court in New Orleans, and we'll see what they decide. For me, the interesting part of this is that both sides seem prepared to use immigration policy as a political football while real people's lives hang in the balance. I would love to see people who are predominantly in the northeastern part of this country, the northern half of California and north of there, who are supporting the president say, you know what? We are actually fighting for policy that will not directly impact our lives in the way it will many of those border states. And we know that, but they don't want to admit that. And I would love to see people who are opposing the president come up with not just a reason why what he's doing is wrong, but a way to deal with some of the human cost created by what might be the appropriate enforcement of the law.
What about it, Ford?
Well, I have to say this. I tip my hat to Judge Andrew Hannon. This is a big day, and I disagree with Brad. I think we're going to see this in the Supreme Court because the next stop for this is the Fifth Circuit Court, which is a lawyer, I can tell you, is the most conservative federal court, and they're going to side with the states on this. What I found most amazing here, and this is a little bit of inside law, is that Judge Hannon basically said the states have standing in this case on something that seems to be a federal question. So this is certainly not settled. This is good news. I do think the Republicans have been given political cover, if you will, given the current DHS funding. And the question is, where do Republicans go forward? I find it very hard that they're going to compromise on this until a court's ruled again, because essentially you're asking them to fund something that the court's blocked.
Well, that's a great point. And I was going to ask you before we get back to Brad, Ford, how does this affect strategy? Do the Republicans now take to the podium and give press conferences and go around and send their people out and say, look, this is what we believed. We believed it was wrong and illegal. A judge has said it's wrong and illegal, and that's why we're defunding it. And now they have the upper hand here.
Well, they do have the upper hand, but remember, if we have a government shutdown, the Republicans are going to get blamed. And the reason is they don't have a unified message, and they're taking on a sitting president who believes strongly in this. What I think they really need to do here is basically find a way to get this bill on President Obama's desk with it defunded. That may even mean, and trust me, is putting forth a continuing resolution funding DHS for 3 more months, because that's how long it's going to take to get to the Supreme Court, and then essentially changing the filibuster rules in the Senate so that all you need is a simple majority versus 60 votes.
Right. What about it, Brad?
I think it's a lot of procedural stuff that's right. Another CR bill would help them get there, but I think, Ford, what you warned is correct. They will be blamed if there's anything even approaching a shutdown. I think the thing to focus on here, and actually both sides should be able, because that's the only way we're going to get real intelligent legislation moving forward, is what Judge Hannon said today that is important, is that states do have some standing here. And I think that's the one thing that reasonable people should be able to agree on. The idea that from a distance you can make policy that really almost exclusively affects people that are far away seems to me deeply insensitive and misguided. As I said, I think the best way to play that would be for those who oppose the administration on this, would be to actually come out proactively with some ways of dealing with some of the human challenges that created by the enforcement of the law as they understand it.
All right, let me give you some information from David Axelrod's book. He told the New York Times, Obama is bothered by his media coverage. Obama can have a short fuse. He called Axelrod a mother blanker and stalked out of a meeting after he criticized the debating techniques of Obama back in 2012. Obama dislikes Maureen Dowd. He views her with contempt, et cetera, et cetera. He's not the nice you know, cool guy he appears to be. No surprise. 10 seconds each. Surprise, Ford?
No, I can't stand Maureen Dowd either, but he's a petulant prima donna who has no political courage.
What about it, Brad?
I love the end of no drama Obama. I wish he could have come clean about those feelings. I think we'd get much better presidential leadership if he could own all of who he was.
All right, panel, thank you very much, both of you, Ford and Brad. We're coming back with the one, the only. Give me 5. It's next. Don't go away.